Yes, indeed, it's راديو لكل مستمع في كل مكان. زماننا الساعة 7:12 داخل استديوهات راديو في مدينة جوبا. And now let us cross over to our mini studio in Nairobi, Kenya, where my colleague Emmanuel Joseph Akile will host Patrick Godi, youth representative to Tumaini initiative. Good morning, Emmanuel Joseph Akile.
Good morning, my colleague Al-Hadi Hawari, and good morning to all the listeners of iRadio across the country, and also those who are listening to us online, and also good morning to our viewers on social media. Indeed, it is a live broadcast from our mini studio here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, as we continue to update the people of South Sudan to bring you the latest from the ongoing Tumaini Peace Initiative, which has brought together government delegation led by General Kol Manyang Juk, the opposition known as UPA, led by General Pagana Moon, and also stakeholders in Indeed, plus the host country, the mediation team, which is being led by retired General Lazarus Simboyo. My colleague Al-Hadi Hawari, if you may allow us to proceed and introduce our guests in the studio here.
Yes, Akila, you can proceed with updating our listeners across the country.
Yes, indeed. Godi is right here and is the right person actually to tell or to inform the public about the latest, because he has always been there in the room during the negotiation. So what's the latest, Patrick Godi?
Thank you, Brother Emmanuel Akile, and also good morning to all our listeners in the country in South Sudan and also beyond. So yesterday we resumed the negotiations after a day and a half space to allow the parties to reflect on the root causes, particularly the government. On Thursday last week, the opposition and the stakeholders made presentation on what they think are the root causes of conflicts in South Sudan. And so the government requested to have time to look into those issues that have been raised so that they can be able to provide a comprehensive response, comments on what they are doing as a government in terms of addressing them. It is also important to underscore that this issue of the root causes of conflict has always been contentious. While the government feels it has done sufficiently enough through the revitalized agreement, the opposition groups and some of us continue to challenge and say, well, there are so many other issues that have been addressed. So yesterday we were able to hear directly from the government towards those issues that we have raised, and they provided responses across political and leadership issues, economic and resource management, social cohesion, structural and historical issues, and also influences of geopolitics influencing the country. So with that, we welcome the report which they presented, and we gave a few comments. The atmosphere was very warm and very friendly, and that session, in fact, is worthy to mention that it was co-chaired by General Kol Manyang alongside General Pagan Amum, the two principals for the government and the opposition. So I think that is a positive sign, and our people should receive this well. It is actually encouraging that we as South Sudanese should be able to, without even the need for mediation, address some of the issues that continue to face us. So we have received the document of the government. As a group, the stakeholders, we went through it in the afternoon and will also continue to look at it this morning. before we convene again for a joint session at 2:30 p.m. Later today.
Yes. Now, before you convene again at 2:30, something that we have to make it clear to the public there. Does that mean from since Saturday, or since the two leaders or the head of the delegations are now co-chairing the discussions, does that mean the discussion will continue? They will continue to chair the discussion up to the end, or only on this agenda of the root causes of conflict in South Sudan?
I think the co-chairing will only be limited to addressing the root causes facing South Sudan. For the other agenda items like defining the relationship between the Tumaini and the RRCs, and discussing the implementation mechanism structures and the repetitions that have been raised by the government, and also the issue of the name and responsibility sharing, should be able to revert back to the Kenyan-led mediation. But I mean, if we continue to make good progress, why not allow for us as South Sudanese to even conclude the process? I think that would really be nice.
And there are concerns there back home, and especially even on social media, talking about root causes of the conflict. For how long are we going to continue talking about root causes? I mean, everyone knows the root cause of conflict in South Sudan. Why making it a big deal? Can you make any justification in that regard?
Absolutely. I mean, Akile, this is a political process, and sometimes there are many perceptions and also understanding of issues. So this being a formal process, I think it's important to also give dignity to those issues, so that in whatever outcome that is reached here, we are able to go beyond this contest that has continued even after the signing of the RRCs. Because if you can imagine, since 2018, there are people, there are groups that continue to feel that the root causes in the conflict in South Sudan have not been reflected into a governance framework, then obviously it's worth giving it attention. And I believe that even while we'll appreciate what the RRCs has been able to do, and some of the protocols within the Tumaini that have captured those root causes and proposed solutions towards them, I think also this exercise will allow us to identify issues that we might have left out in the Tumaini protocols, in the RRCs, and this could be useful towards agreeing on realistic proposals that can address those issues. I think you continue to see how many conflicts at different levels continue to affect us. The recent incident of armed cattle keepers and farmers in Magui, and intercommunal conflicts beyond all the way between BA and Warap. I think it is only through a forum like this one where we agree that this is really a pressing issue, and what can we do about it, and propose a mechanism that can at least try to mitigate the effects of this kind of conflicts.
So the Tumaini will better address the intercommunal conflict in South Sudan compared to the revitalized peace agreement? You can say that?
That is not what I'm saying, but I'm saying it will bring attention towards the issue. And if that is the case, perhaps we'll be able to propose really concrete solution that can tackle it. And Emmanuel, let me also say that we had proposed the protocol on intercommunal violence, armed civilians, and land disputes. We thought this is a real issue that continued to threaten social cohesion among our communities, but even pose a national security threat to our unity. Yeah, so I believe that now that we're all together with the government here, we'll be able to come up with a really good solution.
And you earlier described the mood or the atmosphere, something like a positive sign. Could that be a breakthrough maybe to ease the discussion on the remaining agendas after we conclude these root causes?
Absolutely. I can say that we have broken the ice. We are engaging ourselves in a respectful manner with the opposition and the government and the stakeholders, really putting aside the differences that we have seen in the previous sessions and even when we're starting this round of talks. I think that is positive. At some point we have to be able to rise above these different affiliations that we carry, be it political, be it group, and so on, and really focus on the country. What can we do as South Sudanese to address these problems that face us, without even looking into the interest that we're either losing or we are gaining through that. And I think where we have reached as a country, we're far better off putting these differences aside and really working to rescue our country from the many challenges that continue to face us. Otherwise, I think continued differences, continued arguments cannot help us. And in fact, one of the issues we identified as root causes is the continued political power struggles, which continue to cause a stalemate in terms of even the national programs for the country. And this is exemplified by the revitalized agreement. There are very good provisions that were agreed there. But during the course of implementation, you have seen how the parties continue to have disputes, and these disputes lead to a deadlock. So I think it's a good thing.
And how are we going to ensure that the provisions this time around are better implemented compared to the RRCs?
We will continue to encourage this kind of atmosphere, which creates a conducive environment for the parties during the course of implementation. And while disputes might arise along the way, but that should not be an issue for parties to take extreme positions and say it has to go my way or we don't make any progress. I think the more we are able to generate goodwill, trust and confidence among the parties, the issue of suspicion and mistrust will go down, and this will allow for the parties to really live up to the commitments and the spirit of the agreements that they signed.
Right. And talking about the positive atmosphere and having this positive sign, as you mentioned, first of all, if you go back, what were the sticky points? Why were they not in a good atmosphere compared to recently, after the two leaders actually co-chaired the meeting? What were the differences, and for how long will parties continue to engage in this agenda of the root causes of the conflict?
Previously, there was tension over, first of all, the agenda. The opposition parties felt that we had come towards the end of the process. We had agreed on 8 protocols with the government delegation in July. And what was outstanding is only to discuss and agree on power sharing, and then we signed a final agreement. But the government delegation, when they came back in November, they said they have observed concerns and deviations from those 8 protocols that were initiated. And therefore, they have come with a paper that they want to present to bring to the attention of the mediation, the opposition parties and the stakeholders these concerns, so that they are incorporated into the protocols. So the opposition felt that this was opening the protocols for renegotiation, something which they were not willing to do. And in fact, if you remember, the government was not able to make even that presentation in December because the opposition parties rejected to give them the chance to do that. But we have seen a difference this time around. When this round of negotiations started on the 20th, in fact, the first item of business was for the government to make a presentation of that paper. I think that has unlocked this goodwill that we now see, and we have to commend the opposition for being practical and allowing for that, and that is the spirit that we see. Of course, that in itself does not solve all the other contentious issues. For instance, defining the relationship between Tumaini and RRCs. Is the Tumaini going to be a replacement agreement of the RRCs? Or is it going to be an annex? And you know how hotly this debate has been going on, including on iRadio here, whenever you hosted the government and opposition representatives. You really see that they stick and strongly advocate for their various positions of let us just negotiate the power sharing and we conclude, while the government is saying no, we have observations that are important to be incorporated so that we have an agreement that has clarity and is also implementable. So Akile, I think where we have reached, even with those outstanding contentious issues, I'm sure we'll find the resolve to tackle them in a civil manner.
And I mean, like today, is it going to be like the last day for the root causes, or it depends on the outcome or the agreement?
So the program that we have in the afternoon when we meet, we will now collectively discuss those root causes. We'll give our comments, especially the opposition and the stakeholders, but also the government will be able to answer to some of those questions that we raise, because what they did is they looked at the RRCs and they looked at the issues that have been raised, and where the RRCs made a provision, they said it's already taken care of
by the RRCs.
But also we found out that there are some issues that have already been have had solutions implemented towards them, while others are still just on paper. But I think in the afternoon session we'll be able to include more other issues that can be reflected in the agreement, and of course implementation is another whole program of itself. Once we're able to make that agreement, we are going to form a technical working group that will have representatives from the government, the opposition, and the stakeholders to now put together all these three documents, isolating the issues addressed in Tumaini, addressed in the RRCs, and those issues that we find them to be new and not addressed anywhere, will include them. And it will be the work of that technical working group to now conclude the agreement on the root causes. I think that's more of a technical work, because all the political discussions around it will have been concluded by today.
Okay, that means that's another 1 week now, the work for the technical.
No. I think
we'll continue with the other agendas while the technical team are already working on the.
That will be another consideration, but the idea is the technical working group can have like a day to finalize and panel bid these things into into a good document that we can either consider as a standalone protocol or find where to fit those issues within the two agreements that we have.
Right. So since we're talking about the peace process, yesterday I want to have a view, particularly on a press release on the role of church leaders mediation. That is another initiative. It's called Church Leaders Mediation Initiative in the ongoing peace process in South Sudan. So how many peace processes are we talking about here? This is another one, and you have Tumaini, we have the church now coming in. I mean, what would you say in that?
Akile, what we have found out is that even while we're discussing the root causes of conflict, in fact, Dr. Martin, the Cabinet Affairs Minister, said, let us not say the root cause of conflict in South Sudan, let's say the root cause of conflicts, because there are different types of conflicts in the country. And I think that allows us to look at these things holistically and also tailor different approaches to the many fragments of the conflicts that face us. I think the move by the church is welcome because you know how we have been raising concerns about the absence of some important political and armed groups in the Tumaini. Notably, we do not have General Thomas Cirillo in the Tumaini. We do not have General Simon Gatwich. And this continues to bother South Sudanese, especially those from areas where these two generals have their presence. And if Tumaini is not able to bring them on board, I think the church, in its efforts, and if they can do it, we need to support them. And even I'm very sure there will be collaboration from the Tumaini Initiative mediators to facilitate the church initiative in the engagement with the other whole-out groups that are not here. I think South Sudanese, for obvious reasons, are tired about negotiations after negotiations because they want to move on. These peace processes continue to hold the country hostage. Instead of focusing on development, instead of focusing on democratic entrenchment through elections and constitution and so on, we are in a wait mood. We say, let's bring everybody before we can go forward. And we can't really tell when everybody will agree to be on the table so that we can agree on a national agenda and say, from today onwards, let rebellions, let insurgencies be history. And let's just become like other countries in the region and fight our political battles through a political dialogue, through elections, and so on.
And talking about other holdout groups, there was one general also who defected from Kidgwang faction. It's called General Gatkot. He was complaining to us that he actually came here to join the process, but he was not. I mean, up to now, he's yet to be accepted because he also said he has forces there. Actually, it's like another splinter group, like the one of Nas General, who's already here. So he's saying that it's a similar condition. Why rejecting the participation in the peace process? As a stakeholder, what would you say in that regard? Because here we're talking about inclusivity, having an inclusive kind of discussion for lasting peace in the country.
Yeah, even Tumaini actually is framed around inclusivity. And if you see the background of Tumaini when the process was still under the community of St. Egidio in Rome, it was only targeted towards about 2 or 3 groups that formed themselves to become Soma. So it was actually a process between the government and only Soma. When our president wrote his letter to President Ruto requesting for his mediation, he emphasized inclusivity. He wants to achieve inclusive peace in the country. And also President Ruto, when he was appointing his chief mediator, he emphasized the point of inclusivity. And that's why you are able to see stakeholders here in their diversity, something which was not in Rome. You are able to see other opposition groups that are not part of SOMA, and they're all here. I think it has to do with the question of timing with the new groups that you just mentioned that came to Nairobi seeking to be included into the process. And I still think that it's possible to get them on board. But as you have seen, the process here has largely stalled until actually January. From July all the way up to December, there was no progress that was being made. And maybe the mediation is doing its homework. Of course, this is something they cannot decide on their own. There is the principal mediator, who is the president of Kenya, and there might be some protocols involved in communicating this. But for us as stakeholders, we really want to see everyone included into the process. And this is what I also continue to hear back from home. Our political leaders have been urging all the other armed and political opposition groups who have taken arms against the government to consider joining the Tumaini initiative. I've seen this come out clearly from the governor of Central Equatoria, urging all those other groups who have issues with the government to join the peace process, and Tumaini happens to be one of those.
All right. جبنا لحوالي 22 دقيقة أو 23 دقيقة لرأس الساعة، وبنرجع الميكروفون للزميل بتاع الحادي حواري في العاصمة بتاعة ساوث السودان جوبا، باستديوهاتنا الرئيسية، عشان يقدر يقرأ بعض من الكومنتس في الفيسبوك ويرفع بعض من المكالمات. بنذكر إنه ده البث المباشر بتاع مبادرة تومايني، وضيف بتاعنا في الاستوديو هو باتريك غودي، ممثل بتاع الشباب في المبادرة. لك الميكروفون الزميل الحادي.
نعم، شكرا ايمانويل جوزيف كيلو وباتريك غودي هنا في استديوهاتنا المسقرة في العاصمة الكينية نيروبي. في بعض من الرسائل وبعض من الأسئلة من المستمعين. تريبل اي اتيم بيقول good morning الحادي حواري مان جوزيف كيلو ليو نيلسون and the guests in the studio there. Okay. هو بيقول South Sudanese politicians are known for their personal interests rather than the interests of the people of South Sudan. My question to the guests in the studio is that what will happen if the Tumaini is a halt on little bit and mediators go after Thomas Shirilo and Gatwich Dwal, because these generals are the threat to the people of South Sudan rather than these politicians, this political wing that have nothing to do to the people of South Sudan. I'm watching live from Mayanabun, Twitch County of Warabi State. That is Triple ATM. Triple ATM is asking that question direct to Patrick Godi. في سؤال تاني أكيد بالعربي. سبيل باب قلت هيد لك ولا ضيفة في استديو. هل يوزر الأزمة في البلاد لم تهل بين شرق شمس وضوها، لأنه هي مشكلة معقدة. تركيب سؤالي أطرحه كالآتي: لماذا لم يتم دمج التجريد الأصلي من كافة المواطنين بدل النقاشات حول الموضوع حلها؟ هل تجريد سلاح؟ He's asking here, you know, in South Sudan, security issue cannot be solved in one day. Why don't you start with the issue of disarmament all over South Sudan? I think this one, Patrick Godi also is linked to Tumaini there, anything concerning insecurity. في رسالة تاني بالعربي برضو من شاكوش أكيج from ملكال، بيقول صباح الخير إيمانويل جوزيف أكيل وضيفك الاستوديو المسقر بنيروبي. فأترك لك، هل تومايني يعالج جذور المشاكل في جنوب السودان؟ Is Tumaini will solve the root cause of the issues of the problem in South Sudan? إيمانويل كل يوم بتضيف لنا في الاستديو ناس UPA ورجال دين وأصحاب المصلحة. جيب لنا واحد من وفد حكومة يوم واحد عشان نسمع منه. Emmanuel always, you know, you're hosting people from different groups. Please one day bring for us someone from the government delegation there. This is Shakuja Cage from Malakal town. There's a message here from Angui Ustaz Angui. Because my question to the guests in the studio, there's a lot of discussion of one agenda. Will it not bring another extension of elections? This one to Patrick Godi there. Yes. في رسائل تانية، في رسالة من Joseph Gumadut, my greeting to you in the studio, Al-Hadi Hawari and Emmanuel Joseph Akil in Nairobi, Kenya studio with the guest. Will all the parties in Tumaini Peace Initiative in Nairobi, Kenya agree? This is one question. I'm watching you live from Turalei, Twitch County of Arabi State. Yeah, this from Joseph Madut, Joseph Gumadut there. Nam. Nam. في رسالة ثانية هنا من Motongo Karibo بيقول and when exactly are we citizens hoping for all this inclusive be implemented by both parties? Honestly, my question to our guests, call me Motongo Karibo Junior. Yes. في رسالة ثانية من بانونا يويل بيقول هل أطراف المعارضة قبلت مبادرة كنيسة لقبول أطراف أخرى إذا the opposition parties they accept the initiative of the church to accept the other parties, and then what is your opinion about the point of Paganamum and over the trust and the government delegation? This one is in Arabic. I translate to Patrick Godi there. نسيل بعض المكالمات يا كيلو وبعد ذاك عشان نسمع الاثنين ثلاثة سؤال. هلو راديو. Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, David Mogok.
My brother, let me ask the guys in the studio together with Emmanuel.
Yes.
Is he representing the youth of South Sudan or the youth of the whole out group? If it is the youth of South Sudan, are you aware that there are recently youth who have died in Mogui, in other parts of South Sudan and so forth? Now, people are talking about why people are dying here in South Sudan. This is number one. Number two, this piece of South Sudan that need to be brought in pieces. Why is it very hard for our politicians now to discuss the problem among them in the state of South Sudan? Because many of them did not rebel against the government because of problem of South Sudan to change the government. They have rebelled against the government because of opposition. What are they really discussing? Let them come to South Sudan so that we even South Sudan can join the dialogue. Because we are competent by ourselves.
Yes. Thank you, David Mogok from our town of Western Baragazali State. Yes, hello, good morning. صباح النور عايزك سؤالك مباشر. نعم.
أنا شخصيا
صوتك تحت شديد عايزك.
نعم أنا معك على حاجة.
صوتك تحت شديد.
أوكي أنا قلت سؤال حاليا بشرح لهم هناك في الاستديو. هل الاتفاقية ده ولا الاتفاقية بتاعت 2015 الحكي حاليا فيه 5 نواب ومعادرات، هل فيه اختلاف ولا ما في اختلاف؟ كويس؟ كيف ما بيناقشوا أن الأجندة الأساسية السبب الخلى إنه الدولة قاعدة تنهار، هل هم جزء لا يتجزأ من السبب؟ أنا بتوقع أو أنا بشوف لأنه هم بيتناقشوا حاليا حول المناطق كل زول داير منصب كده وداير منصب كده زي ما حسي هم قاعدين، لكن المواطن لا هو قاعد يعاني ما عنده أي خدمات ولا أي حاجة وما في قاعد يتكلم عن المواطن عايز زول إنما بيتكلم عن المصلحة بتاعه الخاصة. ليه لما زول يشيلوه من السلطة هو بيرجع بيقول قال هو داير يتكلم عن الشعب وبيرجع بيقتل الشعب وبيجي بيقول قال هو داير قاعد يجيب عن الشعب. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا. Patrick Godi, the question of Isaac is that those who are negotiating there, most of them are part of this root cause of the conflict in South Sudan. And the peoples are the ones suffering, and they're always talking about their interests. I think this one need your comment there, Patrick Godi. Hello, Radio.
Good morning, and good morning, Mr. Joseph Akila, and good morning to Patrick Godi.
Yes.
James Dwyer.
James Dwyer, welcome.
Yes, thank you. My first question is going to Patrick. How should we really continue with the negotiation when people are not trusting themselves? And this is driven from the Pagana Mobi statement yesterday at this time that they are just negotiating but not trusting the government delegation. This needs to be clarified by you stakeholders. Why are we wasting our time when people are not trusting themselves in the negotiation ongoing? This is one. The second, are you sure this peace will be inclusive? Because inclusivity is now being break apart
and people are still talking of inclusivity. How will we really see into it that this is now inclusive? The last question is, should we really be trustworthy to the agreement? And since it is Araxis and Tumaini, should we really make a breakthrough for this to be a defendant and agreement with its mechanism that's going to be implemented?
Yes. Thank you. Akile, we have only, there is two questions here. One, in Arabic, you say, user الأزمة فلسفة جديدة للسلب الوقت أليس كذلك? The person is asking, Patrick Godi, is called Banona Iwil. He said the root cause, the discussion about the root cause is the new philosophy to buy time, isn't it? This is to Patrick Godi. The last one, I think, is a proverb, and I want Patrick Godi to answer it. Prince Montana Sr. He said nobody has a better eyesight than a married man coming out from a lodge with his side cheek. He can even see next week. This one to the politicians there. Yes. Imad Al-Jazaf, Akil, over to you there.
All right, shukran jazilan. Thank you very much, my colleague Al-Hadi Hawari. Because we have about 14 minutes, Godi, you can start responding to the questions and the comments. And for the question of why we are not hosting the government, since the beginning we've been trying our best, and the challenge is the timing. The government delegation are not in the same hotel here. They're staying somewhere else. And with the equipment that we have, we will only be able to have a pre-recorded interview, which we are trying our best actually to conduct with the government. And also from the government side, they only have one spokesperson, who's the government rapporteur and the Cabinet Affairs Minister, Dr. Martin Ilion is the only one who speaks to the media. But we're also trying our best to reach out to him. So we are trying our best to balance each and every story that we run. Here in our mini studio, this is in the same hotel where the opposition members are, where the mediation are also here, and also the stakeholder. That's why we are able to always invite them in our studio. Back to you, to give you the mic now to respond to the questions, Patrick Godi.
Thank you, Akile, once again, and also to Al-Hawari in Juba and all the callers and those who send their messages with questions. They are all appreciated. Some of the questions are related to each other, but I will try to combine those that are similar. There was a question from, I think, Triple A, talking about the absence of General Thomas Cirillo. Since the beginning of these negotiations, attempts have been made to reach out to General Thomas Cirillo so that he is part and parcel of the negotiations in Nairobi. It's also worth to mention that General Thomas and his group have raised serious observations about the process. One of the issues is that there is insecurity, there is fear of their safety in Nairobi, given the incidents that had previously happened where South Sudanese activists or politicians were extradited from here. The other issue is the government had not consulted with Soma when the talks were being transferred from Rome to Nairobi. So they felt that was a breach of trust. Otherwise, if you are engaged with someone in discussions and you are going to make such a major move, the least you could do is to consult so that you are all on the same page. But many of these issues are being addressed. The chief mediator, General Lazarus Sumbeo, has traveled to Rome to meet with General Thomas. That happened in October 2024. Also, they continue to maintain contact and explore ways of how General Thomas and others can be part of the process. And I really understand why this question keeps on coming. I think from the beginning up to where we have reached, this has been one of the most important questions raised by South Sudanese. And I think this reflects the knowledge about the conflict landscape in South Sudan. People really know where the problem is, who are those responsible, and anything that does not address that, it raises skepticism, and I understand why. But we will continue to urge for the inclusion of General Thomas, and you had also alerted me that the church mediation is in fact putting together a process that can engage with General Thomas. So I hope that one will also contribute towards the wider peace process. There was a question on disarmament. I did not note the name of the
Sebit Bab
from Sebit. Disarmament is in fact a serious problem in South Sudan. If you see the number of weapons in the hands of civilians, you might in fact conclude and say that the civilians are more powerful and stronger than the military. And we have examples where civilians have overpowered the military. And I remember this happened in Tonj during a disarmament exercise. So how can we address this question? There is also issue of mistrust. You know, our communities, given the challenges we've been facing, have taken the responsibility to protect their lives and their property. And I think to really comprehensively address disarmament, first of all, there has to be assurances of security. Otherwise, communities will continue to justify why they need to carry guns to protect themselves and their property. So this cannot be addressed in one day. I think there has to be a policy towards it, but also overall we have to improve. We have to improve on our on the safety of our citizens. We have to provide incentives through economic activities for many of these young people to move away from the violence that they perpetrate using the guns. We also need to see that the government is providing social services to the people. In that way, I think you address it from a broad angle. You know, issues of food security. You also need to ensure your people are able to eat. It's not only just a matter of withdrawing the guns from the hands of these civilians. What are the alternatives? Otherwise, they will always find their way back.
Has it been addressed here in Tumaini in one of the protocols?
We have the protocol on armed civilians. And one of the solutions that is proposed there is to conduct a comprehensive disarmament exercise. But we have also heard from the government that actually there is a draft bill in Parliament that will address the issue of disarmament. But I think what is important here is trust. Otherwise, if there is no trust during the process, it will be a failure.
Yeah, we can move to the next question. We have about 5 minutes to end up.
We have a question: will Tumaini solve the root causes? This is an important question. We have identified some of the root causes, which, like I mentioned in the beginning, have to do with economy, it has to do with governance, leadership, security, geopolitical, historical grievances. We believe that now we are discussing these issues, we'll really be able to give them sustainable solutions that can try to address them. And we have another question on whether this process will not extend elections. In fact, it is important to tell our listeners that we have prioritized elections and constitution making under the Tumaini initiative. And this is out of the call by South Sudanese. We have listened to South Sudanese across the country who are saying these perpetual transitions and extensions of government without elections need to come to an end. So, in fact, one interesting proposal is that one of the reasons we do not go for elections on time is the question of constitution. So we are also exploring, can we separate the process of constitution making and election so that if we happen to reach towards the end of the transition and we don't have towards the end of the transition without a constitution, election should not be extended on that justification.
Right,
so
right.
it will still be...
Let's go to Ayuel.
Ayuel talked about...
If UPA accepted the church leadership initiative, and the most interesting part also is talked about the leader of UPA yesterday, who has said he doesn't trust this current government delegation. This is actually exactly what he said yesterday, and yet how are we talking about these negotiations now if you
well,
don't trust?
Again, assure yesterday General Pagan and General Kwol were the co-chairs of the session. And what I saw there is far from what he expressed earlier on iRadio. So what I can assure him is that there is confidence being built among the parties, and we hope this will continue until we conclude the negotiations and even implementation.
Magog was asking, yes, are you representing Atu Shabab, of the opposition or the government? Because he talked about the suffering of the people of South Sudan back home.
My brother Magog, I am not a youth leader from the UPA, opposition groups in Nairobi, but rather I am non-political representative of youth across the country, and I have been doing performing this role in South Sudan even before the Tumaini initiative. So I'm not in any way associated with the opposition groups here.
Yes. Because we have about a few minutes now. Ayuel was talking about coming with this agenda of root causes of the conflict. It's like a tactic for you guys to buy time, or maybe for the parties to buy time.
No, I don't think so. In fact, the issue of the root causes was raised by the government. And the government said, from time to time we keep on saying, opposition groups and others continue to say, the root causes of conflict in South Sudan have not been addressed. And in fact, it was Honorable Potgang who said, let us get a list of the root of what you think are the root causes of conflict in South Sudan, so that we can address them if they are not addressing the RSCs. But also, I think you have had some of the callers who said, okay, the problem is the politician. That becomes a political or a leadership issue as a root cause of conflict. So how can we address it if we are strongly feeling that our leaders are in fact the problem, the root cause of all the problems we see in the country?
Any last remarks, 30 seconds?
Well, I want to appreciate you and iRadio for your continued engagement with our people. I also continue to call our citizens throughout the country to closely follow the process, to make their contribution through phone calls, through messages. That is how, as citizens, we influence the process, and you're able to, without contradiction, put forward your ideas. And you know how the radio is listened to by everybody, even the politicians who one of the listeners is asking to come and be part of these discussions. They're also listening. So I continue to call them to pay attention and follow iRadio.
Right. Thank you very much Patrick Godi, youth representative في تومايني هنا. وده بيجيب لنا الختام بتاع حلقتنا الليله من العاصمه الكينيه نيروبي. انا وزميل بتاعي لو نيلسون. نرجع لك الميكروفون للاخبار باللغه العربيه الزميل الحادي حواري.
شكرا اكيد لونيلسون. هناك ضيف بتاعكم باتريك جودي نيابه عن باريا جونسون وان مؤسسا. كنت معكم الهادي حواري. لحين نقابلكم بكره في يوم جديد وتاريخ جديد. بعد شيء هتسمع الاخبار بالعربي مع زميل بتاعي وباجي كل شغال. بس كونوا معنا.